Are we on, Daniel? Hey folks, running just a little bit late here this morning. This is November the 21st, 2019. Very, very special day for me. I'm Sam Satterwhite, the old man at Satterwhite Log Homes. Why is today so special? Well, you know, next Thursday is going to be Thanksgiving and we're going to be closed, so I thought that I would just do a little segment about things to be thankful for. And today is one of those biggest ones. 43 years ago, right now, Trevonda and I were on a jet on our way from Dallas to Las Vegas to get married tonight. Love Las Vegas, not a gambler, but we got to Las Vegas. We're going across the parking lot at Caesar's Palace, and Trevonda saw a playing card laying on the ground in the parking lot and picked it up and looked at it, and it was a 5 of hearts. She picked that up and has kept it to this very day because she thought that was for us, that there would be 5 of us, and there are 5 of us. 43 years, that's a long time. A lot of folks may have been married for 43 years, but not too many of us to the same person. I spent 43 years with my partner. I love her more than when we were married. Life has sure been sweet. We got 3 wonderful kids. We got 6 special grandkids. All 3 kids work in our business. Of course, Trevonda has been in the business since before we were married. She was my first secretary, and so she knows Satterwhite Log Homes from its inception and before. Now, hopefully in a minute or two, Danny may have us some pictures that we're going to bring up. Otherwise, you're just going to have to look at me for this production today. But I want to show you some pictures from way back when Trevonda and I first got married, and some more current. But since we don't have the pictures right now, I can just tell you she's beautiful. She's always been beautiful. She's smart. She's the hardest working woman I've ever met. You know, back in the early days, we even would have a semi-load of house logs come in from Colorado, and I was too broke to have a forklift, and she and I would get out there and hand unload a semi-load of house logs. Now, that may not sound like much to you, but a 6x8D house log that's 16 feet long weighs 120 pounds or so. Well, when you've got maybe 1,000 of them on a truck, that's a bunch of weight. And it takes somebody special to be willing to help you and handle the other end of each one of those, and she did. She puts in as many hours, or maybe more so than I do, still, after 45 years in business. Trevonda's the best cook in the world. She's the best wife and nana in the world. And what else can I say? Am I blessed or what? I cannot be more thankful for my wife Trevonda and our family. I can't be more thankful for our business, all our wonderful employees. We got lots of employees been with us for 30 years or more. We've got folks that care as much about our business as they care about their own livelihood, maybe more. Dedicated folks. We've got wonderful customers. In the early years, I was able to meet all of our customers and develop tons of friendships from that business relationship. Well, as business got bigger over the years, got to the point where I couldn't meet everybody. I still meet a lot, but I miss the closeness that we had in our beginning, where I made friends with almost everybody that we built for or sold materials for. And anyway, I'm blessed all the way around. I want to talk a little bit about another area of blessings and thankfulness. 2 weeks ago, y'all got to meet a guy named Bill Warren, a close friend of mine. Bill is the founder and president of Combat Warriors, Inc., with its beginnings in North Carolina. That's where Bill lives. And that's where the original chapter still is. Now, we spread out, and the first sub-chapter or chapter outside North Carolina was here in East Texas. And it was formed when a young man named Jordan Alexander, and you'll hear about him in just a few minutes also. Jordan, Army, Green Beret, he has been through the worst of the worst of the worst. Thank the good Lord, he has made it through all of the missions that he's been on, the deployments to a lot of the worst places in the world. And he is in the process of being retired out of the Army right now. Hopefully we'll get to see a lot of him back home then. All right, Jordan got to go on one of the hunts in North Carolina. He was stationed at Fort Bragg at the time, and got invited to and went to a hunt with Bill Warren and the other guys from Combat Warriors. And it was so enjoyable and good for Jordan that he asked Bill, how about branching out? How about let's put a chapter in Texas? And so Jordan, Bill came to our office here, met with me and Larry Bennett, who is a long-term salesman here, was and is a right-hand guy. When I was in the hospital with Guillain-Barré here a couple of years ago, Larry, who had been retired at that time, I think 5 or 6 years, he stepped up and he did my seminar presentation for me, which is a tough deal. It's an all-day deal where he had to stand and talk in front of 150 people. I appreciate that tremendously. Okay, backing up. Because of my relationship with Larry Bennett and having watched Jordan grow up from a kid into an outstanding member of our military, I was all in from the get-go whenever it was proposed, let's put a Combat Warrior chapter here. And I was very fortunate that I've been on the board ever since we formed a board here, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I guess. But, you know, I've worked with lots of charities over the years, lots of nonprofits, and Combat Warriors gets me in the heart more than any of the rest of them, you know, because, you know, treating our guys in the military like they're supposed to be treated is something we all ought to do, and it's something that just grabbed me. And so I and all of us on our board have been all in since we started. A young man that I tried to coach baseball to many years ago named Richard Ray has been a president of our chapter here, has done an outstanding job, as have all of our other volunteers. We're a total volunteer organization. Nobody gets paid for anything. If we're on the board or one of our volunteers, all the money that we raise, whether it's in donations or fundraising events, goes for the purpose, and that is those veterans. Oh, well, Danny's got us up something good here. Is everybody seeing that, Danny?
Yes.
Great, great. All right, and this is our last group of soldiers. 2 weeks ago on Thursday, we brought these guys in from all over the United States. All of them have some terrible stories to tell, but they're wonderful guys. 17 heroes. We start in Longview with a parade, and they made me responsible for the parade. Well, this year we went through 3 different school areas. We took our parade through Longview High and up along the driveway through the middle of the school. Cheer, 2,000 students, cheering, waving flags, band playing, ROTC, the Vuettes, everybody made it special. But I saw 2,000 respectful students. We came by a number of businesses that people are out front waving, cheering. Came by Judson Middle School, and there were 500 or so kids out next to the highway, jumping up and down and cheering and waving flags. Past Satterwhite Log Homes on out north to the Diana community. New Diana ISD had kids turned out at the intersection with Highway 154, kids from middle school and high school, a lot of regular folks that had pulled up in a parking lot there to cheer, fire trucks and EMS vehicles, and just all kind of folks joining in, game wardens, Texas Department of Public Safety troopers, Sheriff's Department vehicles, quite a parade. All right, we went through the New Diana Robert F. Hunt Elementary School, and literally went through the elementary school campus, made a loop, and came back out. And there were, 500 or 600 little kids waving flags, shouting USA, USA. Very, very moving thing. And what is really neat, there were 4 guys in my pickup. I'd finally cleaned it out enough that 4 adults could sit in it for this. And 4 of us, we were leading the parade, flags on the front of the truck, flags on the back, big sign, combat heroes approaching for oncoming traffic to know what this parade was. And it was so neat. I've said before, I get old, as I get older, I get softer. And I get very emotional about things. All right, in my pickup, now I wouldn't tell you who these guys were, but there were a number of times during this parade there was not a dry eye in my pickup. Well, we get out to a ranch which we use as kind of the hub of this deer hunt for 3 days, and I find out even those big bad soldiers that we're honoring, there were a lot of tears shed during that parade. I'm going to tell you one quick one. That night, we got into the ranch, which we have a driveway lined with flags. A buddy of mine, David Cooley, who is the president of Boss Crane here in Longview, he had a giant crane on a hill on the ranch with a big American flag 200 and something feet off the ground. The Diana VFD had their ladder truck over the driveway with a big American flag hoisted way above the ground. This is it's a community event, but it gets to these soldiers that we're honoring. And this particular event is our biggest of the year. We bring in these special forces guys from all over the country and treat them like they should be treated for 3 days. All right, doesn't sound like a big deal. Well, it's a big deal to them. And one of the guys that evening was standing there eating supper. We had churches, we have restaurants, we have individuals ask, please, could we come and provide a meal and serve it to these guys? And of course, with our support staff, there are a lot of folks there. Each of these soldiers has a guide for the hunt that is basically with them 24/7 from the parade until they leave out Sunday morning. All right, then our other folks that are doing whatever our job is, whether it's cleaning the yard up and hauling off trash or icing down drinks or whatever. There are 60 or 70 of us on premises for a good bit of the time, especially at the evening meals when the deer and different animals are being brought in to be hung up, displayed, processed, mounts prepared to go to taxidermists. But anyway, there's this one guy, and he was standing by himself eating, and I walked up and said, "Can I get you a chair?" No, I'm fine. I'll just stand here. I put my hand on his shoulder, and I'm not going to call his name, but I just said, "What'd you think of today?" Well, he couldn't talk. He started crying. You see, it gets to me now, even thinking about this. But when he got his composure, he said, "I've never seen such hospitality and patriotism in my life." Well, that sentiment is through this whole bunch. They, excuse me, they are appreciated more than they know here, and quite often I hear nowhere but Texas. Well, that's not the way it ought to be, but maybe that's the way it is. Go back to that picture of those kids, Danny, if you don't mind. Whether it's at New Diana or Judson Middle School or Longview High School, we saw tons of kids showing respect, patriotism, and I have no doubt that this parade and what it represents and who we were taking in the parade has created a spark in some of these kids that will last the rest of their lives. And I hope that that's the second purpose in what we're doing with this is inspiring the next generation of leaders of this country to understand what real heroes are, not somebody that plays some kind of ball or is in some kind of a rock band or whatever. These are real heroes. They've laid it on the line for all of us, and I just can't say enough good about them. And I can't tell you the feeling that all of us in Combat Warriors get in serving them. It's absolutely priceless. Okay, a little bit more about Combat Warriors, and I'll move on. I am terribly thankful to be allowed to be a part of this particular group. It's done more for me than I've been able to do for the group and for these combat heroes that we honor. But our group here in Longview, or excuse me, East Texas, we have folks from more than just Longview involved for sure. But we have events every month of the year. Had a board meeting, it must have been night before last. And in that, we're talking about upcoming events. We've got a hunt going on in Kansas, still in, I think there's one in November. There's some kind of a duck hunting trip in December. We have fishing trips of all different kinds. And at all these events we do during a year, they're not specific to Special Forces. Only this deer hunt we have in November is for that. The rest of the events is just to serve veterans. And it's a good place to get veterans together and let them loosen up and know how respected and loved they are. It's a good deal for them. It's therapy for guys that have been through absolute hell. Get together and if nothing else, just sit around the campfire and drink a beer with their comrades and talk about whatever they want to talk about. Okay. Bill Warren I was talking about, my buddy in North Carolina. he sent me something after our hunt that I think is very special, and I'd like to relate it to you. And it's about being thankful when you're in the middle of despair. There are still silver linings, and we should be thankful in all things. And I think this is really a good one. This was posted on Facebook by James L. Holly on October the 25th, and Bill Warren sent it to me. And it tells quite a story about the beginnings of World War II. A guy named John Guy is writing. I have a master's degree in history, and I didn't know this. What God did at Pearl Harbor that day is interesting, and I never knew this little bit of history. Tour boats ferry people out to the USS Arizona Memorial in Hawaii every 30 minutes. I've been there many times myself. We had just missed a ferry and had to wait 30 minutes. I went to a small gift shop just to kill some time. In the gift shop, I purchased a small book entitled Reflections on Pearl Harbor by Admiral Chester Nimitz. Okay, just 30 minutes ago, I had daughter Christy go order that book for me. I've got to read it. I've been in that same gift shop, but I had to overlook this particular book. But anyway, I think she's getting it from Amazon. Hopefully I'll have it to take with me. The family is going to Branson, Missouri for Thanksgiving. And so maybe I'll have a little bit of time I can read what Admiral Nimitz had to say. Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Admiral Chester Nimitz was attending a concert in Washington, D.C. He was paged and told there was a phone call for him. When he answered the phone, it was President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on the phone. He told Admiral Nimitz that he would now be the commander of the Pacific Fleet. Admiral Nimitz flew to Hawaii to assume command of the Pacific Fleet, landing at Pearl Harbor on Christmas Eve, 1941. There was such a spirit of despair, dejection, and defeat, you would have thought the Japanese had already won the war. The next day, Christmas Day, Admiral Nimitz was given a boat tour of the destruction wrought on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. Big sunken battleships and Navy vessels cluttered the waters everywhere you looked. As the tour boat returned to dock, the young helmsman of the boat asked, "Well, Admiral, what do you think after seeing all this?" Admiral Nimitz's reply shocked everyone within the sound of his voice. He said the Japanese made 3 of the biggest mistakes an attack force could ever make, or God was taking care of America. Which do you think it was? Shocked and surprised, the young helmsman asked, "What do you mean saying the Japanese made the 3 biggest mistakes an attack force ever made?" Nimitz explained, "Mistake number 1, the Japanese attacked on Sunday morning. 9 out of every 10 crewmen of those ships were ashore on leave. If those same ships had been lured to sea and had been sunk, we would have lost closer to 38,000 men than 3,800. Mistake number 2, when the Japanese saw all those battleships lying in a row, they got so carried away with sinking the battleships, they never once bombed our dry docks opposite those ships. If they had destroyed our dry docks, we'd have had to tow every one of those ships to America to be repaired." All right, I'm going to stop right there and tell you a little story back about Jordan Alexander, the young man that I respect so much that was responsible for us opening a Combat Warrior chapter here, and his granddad. Jordan's granddad was a neighbor of mine. I worked on his place a lot when I was a kid, about a mile from right here. His name was Buck Alexander. Family had been in this part of East Texas for a couple of generations, well-respected family. Buck Jordan was in the Navy, and he was stationed at Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. The dry docks that were just discussed in this narrative is where Buck Jordan was on that Sunday morning. He had shore duty, meaning he was not on board the tender ship that he was a crewman of, but he was working on the dock right there. And when I read this yesterday, it brought back some great memories of talking to Buck Jordan. If you go to Pearl Harbor, those dry docks aren't there anymore, but the dry docks would have given you a bird's eye view of what unfolded on December the 7th. That's where Buck Jordan was standing. And you understand that whether it's a dry dock or a regular dock, they're elevated above the water quite a few feet because they're serving big ships. And Buck was standing there and watched it all start, and he stood there watching this line of Battleship Row being bombed and explosions and fires for quite a while that morning. And he was so close to the action that one Japanese torpedo bomber coming in from the mouth of Pearl would have been to his left. A torpedo bomber came in so low and so close that the pilot of that plane and Buck Jordan were on the same level and only about 30 or 40 feet apart. The pilot turned to his right and made eye contact with Buck, turned back, released his torpedo, and he's gone. So he watched the very beginning. What is so neat about my neighbor and friend Buck Jordan, who passed away a number of years ago, is that he is one of the very few. He was on board another ship in Tokyo Bay in September of 1945 that was pulled up alongside the Missouri, and from up high on that ship, he watched the surrender of the Japanese as it unfolded on the deck of the Missouri. The Missouri is docked there at Pearl Harbor now, and if you get a chance to go to Hawaii, make sure you go visit the Arizona and also go on board the Missouri and look at the spot where the surrender took place. Well, how many people were on exact beginnings and end of that horrible war? Buck had to have been one of just a very, very few. Okay, back to the story. As it is now, the ships are in shallow water, and this is Nimitz was talking. As it is now, the ships are in shallow water and can be raised. One tug can pull them over the dry docks, and we can have them repaired and at sea by the time we could have towed them to America. And I already have crews ashore anxious to man those ships. Mistake number 3, every drop of fuel in the Pacific Theater is in top of the ground storage tanks 5 miles away over the hill from Pearl. One attack plane could have strafed those tanks and destroyed our entire fuel supply. That's why I say the Japanese made 3 of the greatest mistakes an attack force could make, or God was taking care of America. I've never forgotten what I read in that little book. It's still an inspiration as I reflect upon it. In jest, I might suggest that because Admiral Nimitz was a Texan, born and raised in Fredericksburg, Texas, he was a born optimist. But any way you look at it, Admiral Nimitz was able to see a silver lining in a situation and circumstance where everyone else saw only despair and defeatism. President Roosevelt had chosen the right man for the right job. We desperately need a leader that could see silver lining in the midst of the cloud of dejection, despair, and defeat. There's a reason that our national motto is, "In God We Trust." Why, or have we forgotten that? I ask you to pray for our country. In God we trust. And everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.